What would you do if one morning armed deputies stormed onto your property, shouting orders, pointing guns, only to find out the whole thing started with lies your neighbor made up? Now imagine this. You're not even part of their HOA, yet somehow they've decided you're fair game. At first it looks like petty harassment, fake letters, made-up fines, nasty notes on your gate. But then it spirals into something darker. Intimidation, threats, even attempts to ruin your livelihood. And the neighbor behind it all? She isn't just power-hungry. She's running a whole scam that's been hiding in plain sight for years. Let me start from beginning. When I first found this land, it felt like the answer to everything I'd been looking for. I wasn't chasing luxury or neighbors who'd compete over who had the greener lawn. I wanted quiet, freedom, a piece of ground where no one could tell me what color to paint my front door, how tall my grass should be, or what kind of truck I could park in my own driveway. That's why I looked outside HOA-controlled developments. I knew the headaches those places brought. Endless rules, constant nitpicking, and neighbors who thought holding a clipboard made them royalty. No thank you. So when I signed the deed, I felt relief. My land was clearly marked outside the HOA line. No gray areas, no loopholes, just mine. I built my cabin the way I wanted, strung up a hammock between two old oaks, and finally breathed. But if peace was the dream that brought me here, Tammy was the nightmare I never saw coming. Tammy wasn't just any neighbor. She was the HOA president. The type who thought her word carried more weight than the county clerk. The kind who walked like she owned every blade of grass within a mile radius. And to her, the fact that my land sat just outside her kingdom didn't matter. In her mind, boundaries didn't apply. The first signs were subtle, the kind of things you almost brush off at first. A drone buzzing low over my backyard, hovering just long enough to make me uneasy. Letters taped to my gate claiming I owed association dues for road maintenance I never agreed to. Petty fines for excessive weeds, even though my property wasn't under their authority at all. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe some new volunteer at the HOA office got carried away. But then I got what Tammy called a welcome package. Inside wasn't a basket of muffins or friendly notes. It was a thick envelope of threats. Pages of fake violations, warnings, and deadlines. If I didn't comply, she claimed, I'd face serious consequences. The tone wasn't just official. It was smug. Like she already believed she'd win. When I brought it to a couple of my neighbors, they just shrugged. "That's Tammy," one said, lowering his voice like she had ears everywhere. "She's been pulling stunts like this for years. Best to just ignore her." Even the local sheriff brushed it off. "Sounds like neighbor drama," he told me, filing it under civil issue. But I couldn't ignore it. Because Tammy wasn't stopping. Her game escalated fast. One morning, I found deputies rolling onto my property with weapons drawn, shouting commands. My stomach dropped. My dog barked like crazy from inside the house as I raised my hands demanding to know what was happening. One of the deputies said there'd been reports, claims of drug activity, stolen goods, suspicious vehicles. None of it true. But there I was, standing in my own yard, treated like a criminal, while Tammy stood at the property line with her arms crossed and a smile that told me exactly who was behind it. She loved every second of it. Watching me humiliated, watching authority turned against me, even though I had done nothing wrong. And when the deputies realized the reports didn't add up, they left. But the damage was already done. The seed had been planted. Tammy could pull strings, and I was her target. That night, I sat on the porch with my dog curled at my feet, staring out at the dark. My land, my safe place, suddenly didn't feel safe anymore. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. A week later, I came home to the smell of smoke. Someone had tossed a burning rag against the side of my shed, and it nearly caught. My dog had been tied up nearby, and if I'd been an hour later, I might have lost him, or worse. That wasn't a prank. That wasn't some petty HOA spat. That was a line crossed into something life-threatening. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the trees outside sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like someone creeping closer. And as I sat there, I realized this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was war. The next morning, I made 2 calls. First, to a lawyer who specialized in property law. If Tammy wanted to play games with paperwork, I was going to arm myself with someone who knew the rules better than she ever could. Second, to a security company. Cameras, motion lights, everything. If she wanted to keep pushing, I'd make sure every stunt was documented and undeniable. Because the truth was, I wasn't just some stubborn neighbor. I had been through worse, and I knew how to fight battles people like Tammy couldn't even imagine. The difference now was that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about stopping someone who thought they could bully, intimidate, and even endanger lives just to feel powerful. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Tammy thought she had control, that she'd already broken me down. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was preparing for something bigger, something she'd never see coming. The first sign that things were about to get bigger than just me and Tammy came when a thick envelope landed in my mailbox. Inside was a cease and desist letter, pages and pages of legal jargon accusing me of harassment, defamation, and threatening the safety of the community. I almost laughed. It was the exact opposite of reality, but it showed me one thing. She was nervous. Nervous enough to lawyer up and try to scare me into silence. Instead of shutting me down, it did the opposite. I scanned the letter, uploaded it, and sent it to a few reporters I knew followed local corruption cases. Within a week, my story was out there. Not just local blogs, but regional press and even a couple of YouTubers who specialized in exposing HOAs picked it up. Suddenly, Tammy's little empire wasn't just our problem anymore. It was public. And once the spotlight turned on, the skeletons started falling out of the closet. Neighbors who had kept quiet for years suddenly came forward. Widows who'd been threatened with foreclosure over imaginary fines. Families living miles away who somehow got HOA dues letters in their mail signed with Tammy's name. Even delivery drivers admitted they'd been screamed at, chased off, or fined just for parking too long. Tammy had built a reputation as the queen of control, and for the first time, that reputation was being dragged into daylight. But the real turning point came from an unexpected place. A knock at my door one evening revealed Lisa, a woman I vaguely recognized from HOA meetings. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in weeks. In her hand was a small flash drive. She pressed it into my palm and whispered, "I can't keep watching this. You need to see what's really been going on." That night, I plugged the drive into my computer, and what I saw made my stomach turn. There were folders labeled non-compliant owners. Not just me, but dozens of names. People who didn't live under HOA jurisdiction at all. Each file had notes, addresses, and even photos. Some were tagged with phrases like, "pressure harder," or "collect fines aggressively." This wasn't neighborhood management. This was surveillance and targeting. Worse, the files revealed connections I hadn't seen before. Tammy wasn't working alone. She had an enforcer, her cousin Alan. His name showed up in emails coordinating intimidation. "Alan will handle it. Send Alan to their door." Alan was the one making late-night visits. The one neighbors said they saw lurking, the one who always seemed to show up when threats needed teeth. It was no longer just an HOA scandal. It was organized harassment, and Tammy wasn't about to let her empire collapse quietly. The very next week, my chickens disappeared. Every last one of them. The coop door wasn't broken, it was neatly unlatched. It was a message. A way of saying, "We can reach you any time." My blood boiled. It wasn't just property anymore. It was intimidation, pure and simple. Then came the letters. Typed, official-looking, stuffed in neighbors' mailboxes and taped to my gate. They claimed I was a dangerous individual with a history of violence, that I was under investigation, and that I should be avoided for community safety. Tammy's playbook was clear. If she couldn't silence me, she'd try to smear me. But here's the thing about lies in the internet age. Once people smell blood, they dig. And when they dig, the truth comes out. So I did what any modern fighter would do. I went online. I told my story on YouTube, complete with documents, screenshots, and testimonies from neighbors. And the response? Explosive. The videos went viral. Comments flooded in, comparing Tammy's HOA to a cartel, not a community board. Strangers from across the country chimed in with their own HOA horror stories. What started as one neighborhood drama became a national conversation about abuse of power. The pressure grew too heavy for authorities to ignore. I filed for a restraining order against both Tammy and Alan, and this time the judge granted it. Lisa's flash drive turned out to be a goldmine for investigators. The emails, the targeting files, the fake fines. It was all there in black and white. Police opened an official case, and before long, local and even national media were circling. Tammy's empire, once built on fear and silence, began to crack. Lawsuits piled up. State investigators stepped in. Alan faced charges of intimidation and trespassing. And Tammy herself? She found herself cornered, her carefully constructed power structure collapsing around her. But even as the dust settled, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Because just when I thought the battle was won, a final message slipped into my inbox. No name, no details. Just 7 words. Some battles never end. Watch your back. And that's when I realized taking down Tammy might have been the end of one war, but exposing the network behind her? That fight was only just beginning.